So, Saints fans, your guest line. Okay, Mike, what is the latest on Sean Payton? Is he staying or retiring?
Man, if I had all that, I'd be pretty good with it. I have always felt Sean would coach this year in 2022. But we've talked about this before. He's not a lifer in this business. And I think this is the first indication that he has now publicly said it. Might have been a private conversation, but I think you see now that the lure of the TV booth is there for him, and a lot of money involved with it. So this is just, a sort of a guess on my part. I think he does return for 2022, but you can hear the tick tock of a clock running on his time as coach of the Saints. I mean, that is obvious.
Was it border? How crazy was your show yesterday? Just fans, listeners, callers, whatever. Was it borderline hysterical?
No, you know what? I think it was sort of a mixed group. A lot of people wanting to talking about the playoffs, and I think that maybe the best playoff weekend you ever saw,
Sure.
so to speak. And thoughts of what happens if, and that had never been part of a conversation with us before. What happens if he leaves? But I think it's you're getting a run here from 2006 all the way at least until 2021 with the same coach. That's a long time in this business. And there's not a lot of guys that are walking that can say it. Mike Tomlin has had a great run. Bill Belichick, unbelievable run with the Patriots. But Sean, you knew just by kind of personality that this day would come. And I do think he has given this serious consideration. I have no doubt about it that he's given it serious consideration. But he is a football coach by heart, and that's part of it. And I was at a clinic. This is a couple of years ago, and his mentor, Bill Parcells, was there. And he talked about coaching and how coaching is like a narcotic. You can't get it out of your system. It's always there. Uh, so I get it. The last 2 years have been difficult for. This is not like going to work at 7 o'clock in the morning and knocking off at 6 o'clock at night. You're putting in a ton of hours. It never leaves you. You're dealing with issues that with players, assistants, everything else around you. And you couple that with also having to deal with COVID issues, relocation issues this year because of Hurricane Ida, the injuries, everything sort of mounting. And so I could see why it's taken its toll. I had a former NFL coach live maybe a quarter mile from me, and every year, he'd always, the season was over. The second day he would show up at my house, he looked as though he had been in a fist fight. I mean, you could see it had taken its toll on him. A couple weeks later, he was fine, but that mental and physical toll does take place. Does take place. And unless you've been, and there are other professions that it does the same thing.
Sure.
That you get that. It's not, because I hear it from a couple people about how they work in 20-hour days. Oh, okay, you might be up 20 hours, but you clinking the glasses late at night, you're doing other things. You're not working 20 hours a day. For coaches, it never ends. because you don't have somebody as a chief of staff come into your office and tell you, well, the special teams guy, he's feeling okay today. Okay, you going through a lot, and it's a lot of processing. So I can understand the lure because the money's there. From now all these huge money deals from a Fox, from an Amazon to try to get someone who like Sean, who's really good on the air when he wants to be. Man, those coaches shows we do, when he's on, he's really good. Now he's got other nights that maybe the fastball isn't coming in at 85 miles an hour.
Well, Mike, let me ask you this: do you read anything into the fact that he just got married? And I mean, it's kind of a new chapter. Maybe
I think for everyone, your personal life has something to do with it. I think in that sort of decision, your personal life does have some factor in it. I don't think there's any question that it at least has some. I'm not in that house, so it's difficult to answer that, but I could see where it would be. Because, that wife's like, wait a minute, did I sign up for this full time? Where's our time together? And it's limited. And like I say, that's just not coaching. You've got some other lines of business that also have similar type pulls and tugs at you.
All right. So you think he will? So if you had to call, like you said,
if I had to call it today, and I don't know
90%?
anything,
80,
anything from him, I would say he is going to return.
Okay.
But it would not shock me that he would walk away either. But I think just telling me is something I've sort of known a little bit for a while, that the tick-tock of a clock is now ticking even louder, that he won't be coaching in the NFL in the near future. Now, for Saints fans, they don't want to hear that, but that's just the obvious at this particular point. And he always, too, and I always bring this up, that he always had number 9 that could fix anything, so to speak, in that locker room as a leader at quarterback. Didn't have that this year. How coincidental, isn't it? And we've talked about this, that guy made so much of a difference on and off the field also. Not having Drew.
No doubt.
And so you know,
yeah.
you
So
it.
all right, Mike. Here's where here's my takeaway from listening to you. Drew's retired. He just got married in June, and you throw in COVID and some other things, and he's done it all, and he's hoisted the trophy. So I mean, that's kind of all happened. Bam, 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 and And my question is, if he does decide to, and I know how driven he is, and you've mentioned it, and I've read Jeff Duncan's book. I mean, he is the ultimate grinder. But what is he ready to get? If you're waffling, and you're debating it to this point, can you get back in the saddle and be all engines go again, Mike?
Yeah, because I think he saw that with his mentor in Bill Parcells, who every year went through a similar situation. Like I said, I had a neighbor, a friend of mine, who played and coached under Paul Brown when he was in Cleveland. And he would always tell me Paul would quit every year. But he said, a couple of weeks later, Paul was fine. But he said it did, and he said, we talking about 1950s, early 60s. That's a lot different than today, because you sort of ruled the school when you were the head coach. you sort of ruled everything. And it's a lot different today. There's a lot more distractions. You're dealing with more players. You're dealing with contracts. You're dealing with money. You're dealing with bigger egos. That part of being a head coach at that level brings on a lot of responsibilities. Now you get paid a lot of money. Now you get paid a ton of money, but there comes to a point where do you want to deal with it anymore? And do you want to, live a somewhat normal life where you can leave from an airport on a Friday morning and get to your destination of when you're going to do a game, and you spend the weekend, and by Monday morning you're back home,
Mm-hmm.
and you're making somewhat the same amount of money.
Yeah, no doubt. He's making
But
9 plus. They'll offer him that plus. Yeah,
oh,
good point.
no question. But the thing about it is, there's no bigger rush. That void is there when you don't have those players and that camaraderie and that ability to love the grind, where every week it's you preparing. Okay, every week you have that in your head of what you want to do and the feeling of winning. And then winning becomes fleeting. Um,
Yeah.
Bill used to always say, "Man, we'd have a big win, and I'd run off the field, and instead of enjoying the win, I'm thinking about the next week."
I mean, literally within minutes. It's unbelievable.
I mean, bow, and you flip it, and it becomes that. It becomes that quick of what it's about.
Let me ask you
That
this, Mike. So she's 20 years younger than him.
yeah,
I just think there's something to. I mean, obviously he's excited. It's a wonderful time in his life. He was able to meet someone else that he wants to spend his life
and they
with.
had been together for some time before excuse me, before they got married. So it's not like it's the first time for her, so to speak, in this environment,
Right.
because they had been together now for quite a few years. So it's not like it happened just last year. So she's been used of it, but there comes a point where it's, hey, I actually want to see you now and then.
Right. Right. I'm 30. I just think, yeah. I mean, he's 57 and he's a youthful 57, but she's 37 years old. She's had a career. She seems smart and sharp. She's gorgeous. And I just wonder, hey, look, we got married June 18th and we got to spend about 10 days together, and then boom, you're gone for 6 months, literally. I mean, before I get up and I go to sleep before you get back.
Yeah, we had this conversation with A Bear last night, and Bobby's like, during the football season. I used to say he told his first wife, "Hey, look, if the kid starts crying at 1 o'clock in the morning, you better get up and go deal with it, because I'm preparing for the week. It's not about practice and going to meetings. I was bringing that home with me,
Mm-hmm.
and so he said, he had hired outside help to help his wife with the children and everything else. And he said, you living your own life as a quarterback. So he says, I get it, because we're putting in, you know, basically like a head coach, almost the same amount of hours. That I'm at the facilities at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm getting ready. We're going through game plans. We're looking at film. We go through practice. We go through game planning again. Okay, I'm back home, but I can't get it out of my head. So I'm looking at it again. I'm studying it again. I'm going through different tendencies. And the home life is that you want to be involved, but to what extent? Because you really sort of mentally not all in. That's how consuming this game is. That's how
Yeah.
much it is. And Bob had told me the story already, because you know, like you said, man, Mike, it's a different life. And like you said, he knew I was doing something full time before into the broadcasting deal, and he's like, it consumed you too, the exact same way. That you there, but are you really there? Until you've been through it, it's not like, well, I got the weekend off and I'll go here and there with the kids and the wife, or I'll go fishing, or I'll go hunting, or I'll go here and I'll go there, and I'll spend time with them. Like he said, hey, for those 6, 7 months, your life is consumed by the game, and that's what Sean's going through now. And it's different at 57, 58.
No question.
Than it is when you 49, 50. It's different. I say this about older players because I heard Clint Eastwood make the line about what keeps your longevity going, and he said, I never opened the door for the old man. I don't want the old man to come in my life. But he said there are moments, sometimes getting out of bed, things don't feel quite the same. And, and sometimes, your memory may be a little bit, shook. But he said, when you get older, the battle is not the health. The battle is keeping the old man out of your life. And those type jobs, the old man got a key to the door.
Yeah.
And he can walk in, and he's sort of telling you certain things. And we see it in players. It was funny. This weekend, I saw the old man have the key for Tom Brady in the first 3 quarters. That old man had a key to the door. He was there.
True.
And then Brady got a little bit of luck with it.
Shook it off.
Some turnovers. But what he did is he grabbed that old man by the belt and he threw him out the house. But not many people can do that. And to see the longevity of a Belichick, a Tomlin, a Peyton in the same spot is remarkable today.
It is.
Just remarkable.
All right, if he retires, is this Mickey Loomis's? Well, first, how much longer do you think Loomis wants to do? He's been in this, in the saddle for a long time and been super successful. But is this Loomis, and he'll run the whole show to make a hire if Sean does decide to retire, Mike?
I think the one other person that will be involved will be Dennis Lauscher. Dennis has been sort of the chief financial guy for this football team, and has been sort of the right-hand individual for Gail Benson for any sort of matters of this extent. So I think Loomis certainly will have a major say, but I think Dennis will also be there in the decision-making process. If Sean would leave, and this is hypothetical, if Sean would leave, I'd be shocked if Dennis Allen didn't get the job.
Wow. Okay. Defensive coordinator.
I'd be shocked if he didn't, because when Sean was sick, and when Sean had the COVID, Dennis sort of took over. And Dennis has had a head coaching experience in the NFL before with the Oakland Raiders, but I think that's probably where they would swing to as far as head coach. And we're talking hypothetical. If Sean would leave, let's say within the next few days, and I think he'll make something official over the next couple of days. I really think, and that's why my belief is that he will return. Because I think Sean's the type of guy that if he'd leave, I think you probably know about it by now.
Okay. All right. So that's a lot to digest there in New Orleans. And we'll see what happens with the Super Bowl winning coach. Greatest coach in the history of the franchise and one of the probably top 3 or 4 football coaches on the planet.
But here's the crazy part. See, most of these people outside of New Orleans was trying to tackle him to another team. but we sort of knew that it wasn't necessarily him trying to go to another team. That team was the TV booth.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, like you said, the money, the opportunity, and the
A
schedule.
lot less stress. A lot
No
less stress.
question.
And we've seen it before. John Madden made that transition. John never had a TV or radio show, and then he goes on national TV to become an announcer. Gruden did the exact same sort of kind of roll into the TV booth. Bruce Arians did it for a couple of years. So
That's
we've
right.
seen coaches. Bill Walsh did it. People might not remember, but Bill did it for NBC for a few years when he retired from the 49ers. So that part, and Bill struggled with it. He really struggled with it. Before he had passed away, he had come down here to he was the winner of the Pete Rozelle Award, and he told me about he really struggled in the booth. Now Sean, he ain't got that issue. Sean can talk, and he's not going to be sensitive about being critical of a player and a coach. And I think Drew went through that this year. He had a difficult time with it, and that's the hardest thing for a former player or a coach, to be critical of another player or a coach. You go through that, and I get it. John had his own style, and he did it his own way. But I think for most people getting out of the game and into the booth, it is a difficult move for them to say anything negative about another player, another coach. Sean, he won't have that. Sean won't have that issue. Believe me. He won't have that issue.
I love it. Mike Detillier on the Bucked Up Energy Drinks guest line. Thanks, Mike. We'll talk next week.
All right, bud. Take care.
Oh, man. Sean Payton will not have that issue to call out a coach or a player if he's a color analyst or a studio analyst, which is good, right? Because Tony Dungy and Bill Cowher are worse than watching paint dry. The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by Sound and Communications. SoundcomAV.com. The leader in audio and visual for churches and businesses, and sports venues and facilities. SoundcomAV.com. That's Sound and Communications. SoundcomAV.com. Straight ahead, what's happening in Oxford, Mississippi?